The opening and the turning point. The mud puddle of resilience. Have you ever wondered what the exact moment of a psychological breaking point looks like? It does not arrive with cinematic background music or dramatic declarations. It happens in the deafening, humiliating silence of a freezing evening. It looks like dark, oily street water soaking into the fragile threads of a borrowed silk dress. It tastes like the metallic grit of city mud and swallowed tears. Picture a woman who has exactly $12 left in her bank account, kneeling on scraped knees in the middle of a flooded crosswalk, utterly destroyed by a universe that seems to treat her suffering as a punchline. Most people would look at this miserable scene and see a tragic ending, the absolute destruction of a person's dignity. But what if I told you that this devastating, bottomless pit of public humiliation was actually the beginning of the most terrifyingly beautiful power play you will ever witness? Billionaire Bliss Audio warmly welcomes you to a journey that will challenge everything you think you know about pride, survival, and the fierce mechanics of the human heart. If you find yourself drawn to raw, unfiltered stories that strip away the illusions of modern life, please take a second to hit that subscribe button right now. Your support is the very foundation of our channel, giving us the driving motivation to keep uncovering and sharing these profound narratives with you. Now, let us step back into the freezing rain and meet the woman in the mud. Her name is Audrey. She is a single mother, and she is currently living out the absolute worst-case scenario of a blind date. A well-meaning friend had essentially cornered her into agreeing to meet a Silicon Valley tech executive, a man rumored to be so far out of her league that the very thought of him made her stomach twist with imposter syndrome. She had left her cramped apartment in a borrowed designer gown that felt like a beautiful lie, hoping for just one night of normalcy. But the cosmos had a twisted sense of humor. First, her decade-old, exhausted sedan stalled completely at a heavily congested intersection. Then, the sky broke open, dropping a torrential, unrelenting downpour that washed away any trace of her careful preparation. Forced to abandon her dead car to wait for a tow, she sprinted the last 3 blocks toward the restaurant. And then the final, cruelest blow was struck. A massive delivery truck barreled through a hidden pothole, sending a massive tidal wave of murky, filthy street water violently across her body. Startled and blinded, Audrey slipped on the slick pavement and went down hard, her hands and knees plunging straight into a thick, unforgiving puddle of brown sludge. The natural, self-preserving instinct for any human being in this position is immediate retreat. You hail a cab, you go home, you stand under scalding water to wash off the shame, and you send a deeply apologetic, fabricated text message about a sudden family emergency. But Audrey does not run away. I need you to understand the profound, almost frightening psychology of a single mother who has been battered by the world. When you have spent years navigating the terrifying waters of raising a child alone, when your nights are consumed by silent panic attacks over pediatric medical bills and grocery store budgets, your relationship with your own ego fundamentally shifts. Audrey's pride is no longer a fragile glass sculpture waiting to be shattered. It is forged, heavy iron. Compared to the visceral terror of failing her child, a little street mud and the judgmental stares of wealthy strangers mean absolutely nothing. She pushes herself up from the pavement. She wipes the dripping sludge from her face, leaving a stark, brown streak of grime across her pale cheek. She looks down at the ruined, filthy dress clinging to her freezing skin. And then, with a terrifying kind of calm, she continues walking toward the glowing crystal chandeliers of the Michelin-starred restaurant. She is not walking through those heavy glass doors clinging to the desperate, naive hope of meeting a billionaire savior. She is walking in as a raw, defiant display of resilience. She is looking the universe dead in the eye and declaring that it can strip her of her dignity. It can cover her in dirt, but it cannot make her surrender. She gave her word she would be there, and so, dragging the chaotic, undeniable reality of her life behind her, she steps inside. The encounter and the shattered expectations as she steps inside, dragging the chaotic, undeniable reality of her life onto the immaculate marble floor, the silence in the dining room becomes absolute. The maitre d' immediately steps forward, his face a mask of polite horror, ready to intercept what he clearly perceives as a deranged vagrant wandering into an exclusive sanctuary. But before he can utter a single syllable of dismissal, a man rises from a dimly lit corner booth. This is Julian. He is a man who has spent the last decade building a technological empire, surrounded by people who meticulously curate every syllable they speak and every garment they wear to impress him. He is suffocating in a world of polished veneers, exhausted by women who laugh too loudly at his jokes and men who agree with his every thought. He had agreed to this blind date out of sheer, numbing obligation, fully expecting another evening of strategic small talk and calculated charm. When Julian looks at Audrey, standing there shivering with street mud dripping from her chin onto a ruined silk neckline, he does not feel pity or disgust. He feels something much closer to profound shock. In a room filled with multimillionaires projecting carefully constructed illusions of perfection, she is the only terrifyingly real thing in sight. He watches as she politely bypasses the stunned maitre d', her spine incredibly straight, and walks directly toward his table. She does not cower. She does not offer a breathless, frantic stream of excuses. She simply takes her seat, looks him directly in the eye, and asks for a glass of tap water and a napkin. I want you to put yourself in Julian's shoes for a moment. Imagine the psychological jolt of expecting a fragile, embarrassed woman desperately trying to save face, and instead meeting a warrior returning from a battlefield, utterly unbothered by the blood and dirt on her armor. He offers to call her a car, assuming she wants to escape the searing, judgmental stares of the surrounding tables. Audrey takes the cloth napkin, calmly wipes the grime from her cheek, and declines. She tells him, with a quiet intensity that makes the air in his lungs catch, that she paid a babysitter $20 an hour for this evening, and she has absolutely no intention of wasting the investment. That single sentence shifts the entire tectonic foundation of the evening. Julian suddenly realizes that her presence here has absolutely nothing to do with him, his billions, or his status. She is here because she refuses to let a disastrous sequence of events steal her. Night of reclaimed humanity. For the first time in his adult life, a woman is sitting across from him who wants nothing from his wallet and everything from her own unyielding sense of agency. The superficial script he has followed for years goes up in flames. He signals the waiter, ignores the menu entirely, and orders the most robust, warming meal the kitchen can produce, leaning across the table with genuine, undivided fascination. The unveiling of truth beyond the glamour, it is precisely this unapologetic defiance that hooks him, pulling him out of his cynical isolation and plunging him into the deep end of her reality. The dinner that follows is not a date. It is an autopsy of the human experience. Stripped of the protective barrier of a flawless physical appearance, Audrey finds she has absolutely no energy left for polite societal lies. When Julian asks about her life, she does not dress it up in the language of an ambitious, thriving professional. She tells him about the bone-deep exhaustion of holding a sick toddler at 3 in the morning while mentally calculating how long she can stretch a half-empty box of cereal. She speaks of the brutal, invisible machinery of poverty, how being poor is practically a full-time job of exhausting logistics. She does not say these things to extract his sympathy. She states them as geographical facts of her existence, mapping out the territory of her life with a blunt honesty that leaves him mesmerized. Julian, in turn, finds the heavy, ironclad vault of his own guarded psyche cracking open. Men in his position are taught to view vulnerability as a liability, a weakness to be exploited by competitors and opportunistic partners. But looking into the eyes of a woman who has nothing left to hide, he feels a desperate urge to match her courage. He confesses the isolating, hollow echo of his own existence. He tells her about the quiet terror of realizing that his immense wealth has built a fortress so impenetrable that he can no longer distinguish between genuine affection and well-disguised greed. He admits that he has not felt truly seen as a human being in years, that he is essentially a walking, talking bank vault to everyone he knows. There is a profound, almost electric intimacy that blooms when two people drop their weapons at the same time. The muddy dress and the expensive suit cease to matter. They are just two profoundly tired souls sitting in the middle of a glowing room, finding an unexpected sanctuary in each other's voices. Audrey realizes that the billionaire she had feared is just a man imprisoned by a different kind of scarcity, a scarcity of truth. Julian realizes that the woman he is speaking to possesses a kind of wealth he has never been able to acquire, an unbreakable core of self-reliance. By the time the restaurant slowly empties and the waitstaff begins stacking chairs, they have built a microscopic universe at their table, a space where neither of them has to pretend to be invincible. The collision of worlds and the currency of pride, but building a bridge between a life defined by survival and a life insulated by limitless wealth is never without structural failures. The weeks that follow their unconventional first meeting are intoxicating, filled with quiet, stolen moments that bind them closer together. Yet, the inevitable collision of their realities is looming, driven by a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to care for someone. Julian, having spent his life solving complex algorithmic problems with massive capital injections, looks at the struggles in Audrey's life and sees easily fixable data points. Without asking for her permission, he sets his resources in motion. He quietly pays off the suffocating medical debt she had mentioned in passing. He has a brand new, remarkably safe SUV delivered to her apartment complex to replace her dead sedan. In his mind, this is the ultimate expression of love. He is using his armor to shield her from the brutal world that has battered her for so long. When Audrey discovers what he has done, the reaction is not the tearful, cinematic gratitude he expects. It is a quiet, devastating fury. I need you to grasp the deep psychological injury this inflicts on a woman who has built her entire identity on her ability to survive independently. When Julian erased her debts and replaced her car with a stroke of a pen, he did not just remove her burdens. He inadvertently invalidated her daily, agonizing triumphs. He made her fierce struggle look like a trivial accounting error that could be swatted away by a wealthy man. Standing in his sprawling, empty penthouse, her voice trembling with an anger born of deep heartbreak, Audrey explains that she is not a charity case or a pet project to be funded. She tells him that the tiny, cramped apartment she pays for with her own sweat is a castle she built with her bare hands, and he has just walked in and told her it was made of dirt. She refuses to become dependent on a power dynamic where he is the eternal savior and she is the perpetual victim. She leaves the keys to the new car on his glass coffee table, turns her back on the sweeping skyline views, and walks out the door. The severance is abrupt and agonizing, leaving Julian standing alone in the suffocating silence of his wealth, staring at the keys. He realizes, with a sickening drop in his stomach, that his money had not fixed the problem. It had just built an insurmountable wall between him and the only real thing he had ever loved. The surrender to vulnerability and the final triumph. It is only in the deafening silence of her absence that he finally comprehends the profound difference between saving someone and standing beside them. Julian spends 3 agonizing weeks dismantling his own ego, unpacking the toxic belief that his worth in a relationship is defined by his ability to financially rescue his partner. He realizes that Audrey does not need a knight in shining armor to slay her dragons. She has been slaying her own dragons for years. What she needs is a partner to hold her sword when her arms get tired. This realization forces Julian to do something he has never done in his entire life. He surrenders control. He leaves his driver, his tailored suits, and his security detail behind. He takes the subway to her neighborhood on a rainy Tuesday evening, walking the last 3 blocks to her cramped apartment building, letting the rain soak through his jacket. When Audrey opens the door, wiping a streak of flour from her face, she finds a man who has finally stepped out of his fortress and into her world. Julian does not offer her a check or a grand, sweeping gesture. He asks if he can come in. He sits on her worn-out couch, surrounded by the chaotic, beautiful mess of her life. The scattered toys, the stacks of bills on the kitchen counter, the faint smell of cooking oil. He looks at her, completely stripped of his billionaire persona, and asks for her forgiveness. He tells her he does not want to fix her life. He just wants the privilege of being part of it. He asks to meet her child, not as a benefactor, but as a man asking for permission to enter their sacred, fiercely protected space. This is the true climax of their story. It is not a dramatic rescue, but a quiet, profound act of mutual respect. Audrey looks at this powerful man, sitting awkwardly on her second-hand furniture, and she sees that he has finally understood the assignment. She smiles, a small, genuine expression that lights up the dimly lit room, and invites him to help her cook dinner. As they stand side by side in the tiny kitchen, chopping vegetables and navigating the crowded space, the gap between their worlds finally closes. It closes not because one surrendered to the other's reality, but because they chose to build a new one together, rooted in the fierce mechanics of a shared, equal human heart. Thank you for walking through the storm with us today here at Billionaire Bliss Audio. If this story resonated with the deepest parts of your own journey, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and do not forget to subscribe. Until next time, remember that the most beautiful power plays do not happen in boardrooms. They happen when we strip away our armor and dare to love each other in the mud. The story of Audrey and Julian is a powerful testament to the fact that true intimacy cannot be bought, nor can genuine resilience be bypassed with a checkbook. When Julian initially tried to solve Audrey's problems with his immense wealth, he failed to realize that he was stripping away the very pride and agency that made her so remarkable. He viewed her struggles as mere accounting errors rather than the fierce, daily victories of a devoted mother fighting to build her own castle. It was only when he stepped out of his insulated, gilded tower and entered her chaotic, beautiful reality, without his armor, his resources, or his need for control, that their relationship truly began. This narrative profoundly illustrates that authentic love does not thrive in power imbalances or savior dynamics. Instead, it blossoms when two individuals meet on equal footing, daring to expose their scars and acknowledge each other's intrinsic worth. Audrey did not need a hero to rescue her from her life. She needed a true partner willing to stand beside her in the trenches. By learning to surrender control, Julian discovered a wealth far greater than his billions, the privilege of sharing a deeply human, unvarnished life with a woman of unbreakable strength. Ultimately, their journey reminds us that the strongest bridges between people are built not with money, but with mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and the courage to love without conditions. The profound lesson: true love and genuine connection require mutual respect and the surrender of control, not rescuing or fixing. When we try to save someone by simply removing their obstacles without honoring their agency, we risk invalidating their strength and identity. Real partnership means standing shoulder to shoulder in the struggle, holding space for each other's vulnerabilities, and recognizing that material wealth is meaningless compared to the unyielding power of an independent spirit. How to apply this to your life? In your own relationships, resist the immediate urge to fix a loved one's problems, whether through financial help, unsolicited advice, or taking over their battles. Instead, practice active listening and ask how you can best support them while respecting their independence. Strip away your own ego and the protective societal masks you wear. Allow yourself to be seen in your raw, imperfect state. Remind yourself that true intimacy is built when you choose to hold someone's hand through the storm rather than trying to buy them an umbrella. A question for you: if you were in Audrey's shoes, how would you have reacted to Julian secretly paying off your debts and buying you a new car? Please leave a comment below to share your perspective so our community can discuss these different viewpoints together. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel. Your support gives us the motivation to keep creating more meaningful and captivating content for you.